According to human nature and community standards, children are usually best raised by their natural parents in their families of origin. But that is not always possible, and for various reasons it is sometimes necessary for children to be placed elsewhere. Adoption is a method of providing a substitute family for children who cannot live with their birth family. It's important to appreciate that in connection with adoption, the best interests of the child, in the long as well as in the short term, are the paramount consideration, not the hopes of intending adoptive parents, nor the rights of birth parents. No one has a right to adopt any particular child, and an adoption order will be made only if it is clearly preferable to any other arrangements that can be made for the care of the child. There is pretty good social scientific evidence that adoption results in superior outcomes for children who cannot live with their birth families when compared to those in long-term foster care in all domains of life. Even if adoption produces no immediate practical change in a child's day-to-day arrangements, it appears to have significant long-term psychological benefits. This seems to be because it provides children with a reinforced sense of belonging in the adoptive family. Psychologists sometimes call it felt security, and with stronger mutual bonds of emotional commitment between the child and the adoptive parents, which endure not just for childhood, but for life. However, it is also clear that if adopted children do not know and understand their origins, they miss a significant component of their identity, and this carries a significant risk of identity issues and depressive disorders in teenage years and later life. For that reason, nowadays we regard best practice in adoption to be open adoption. That is, adoption in which children learn, in an age-appropriate way, their origins and birth family, and have ongoing contact with their birth family. Adoption orders will rarely be made unless there are satisfactory arrangements in place for birth-parent contact. The ideal situation is one in which the child regards himself or herself as having two sets of parents: the legal adoptive parents with whom she or he lives and who exercise parental responsibility, but also the birth parents who have been unable to care for the child but love him or her nonetheless. Optimising this requires the establishment of mutual trust, respect and cooperation between adoptive parents and birth parents, and achieving that requires tolerance, time and hard work. Those contemplating adoption need to understand very clearly that if they adopt a child, the birth parents are going to remain a part of that child's life and thus necessarily become a part of their own, the adoptive parents' lives, and that this is going to involve ongoing contact with the birth parents. If you find that idea threatening, then perhaps you need to reconsider whether local adoption is the best solution for you. Supporting birth-parent contact includes promoting the child's participation, even when the child might be reluctant. While these situations are difficult, especially with younger children, the child's response is usually a reflection of the underlying attitude of the adoptive applicants and on their parenting capacity. Caseworkers need to ensure that applicants appreciate, from the outset, the reality of birth-parent contact, its importance for the child's long-term welfare, and their responsibilities for supporting it. On the other hand, the goodwill of birth parents is also an important aspect. This can often and understandably be even more difficult to secure, because they will already have had their child removed from them and will now be facing the termination of their legal status as parents. Often, they will be resentful and angry. There are, however, at least two measures that can help. The first is that with the passage of time, ongoing contact with the child and exposure to the applicants, they can come to appreciate that their child is well, happy, and receiving care of a quality that the birth parents could not provide. Not infrequently, growing realisation of this brings birth parents to consent to adoption. The second is assurance that adoption does not mean an end to their relationship and contact with their child, and indeed that there are ways, such as contact plans and contact orders, of securing contact for the future. Before proceeding to adoption, time needs to be allowed for birth parents to become habituated to the placement and to recognise its benefits, and when the idea of adoption is introduced, caseworkers need to provide reassurance that this will not jeopardise contact. An additional way of addressing the identity issue is in the child's name, for example, by including or retaining the birth family name as a middle name. The concept of open adoption sits uncomfortably with secrecy, and it does nothing to reassure birth parents if information concerning the child and the proposed adoptive parents is kept secret from them. Except where there is really serious concern for the safety of the child, the preoccupation with secrecy of the identity and whereabouts of the adoptive parents and the child should be avoided. So to sum up the main points, it's very important to establish at the outset the expectation in prospective adopters that the birth parents are going to be involved in the child's life, that a good relationship with them is important for the child, and that they have a responsibility in the long-term interests of the child to make that relationship work even when it is challenging. It's also important to respect the position of the birth parents, to allow time for them to adjust to the idea of adoption and to come to recognise its benefits for the child, to assure them that their relationship and contact will not be jeopardised, including by avoiding the appearance of unnecessary secrecy. Although adoption may result in no immediate practical change in a child's circumstances, it has significant long-term benefits over the alternatives for children who cannot live with their family of origin. Of course, that does not mean that it is clearly preferable to any other arrangements that could be made in every case. The best interests of the child must always be the paramount consideration, and that usually involves maintaining some connection with the family of origin.